My name is Sanjay Gupta. I'm a cardiologist in York. Today I wanted to talk about something that is rarely talked about, but is becoming the silent epidemic of our time. Right, we often think of illnesses in terms of viruses, plaques, clots, and cancers. Things we can see, things we can measure, things we can scan, things we can surgically excise. But one of the most insidious threats to our health today is far more invisible. It does not show up on blood tests. It does not cause overt physical symptoms. And yet it quietly corrodes us from within. That threat is loneliness. It is important to draw a distinction between being alone and being lonely. You can be lonely even when you're surrounded by people. At first glance, loneliness may seem like an emotional inconvenience, an occasional sadness, a yearning for companionship. But emerging research has revealed that loneliness is not merely a state of mind. It is a serious biological stressor that can affect the body in profound and measurable ways. So much so that the US Surgeon General recently declared it a public health crisis, comparing its mortality risk to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. We should talk about the biology of isolation. You see, human beings are social creatures. Our brains evolved not just to survive, but to connect. And when that need for connection is unmet, the body interprets it as a threat. Chronic loneliness will activate our flight or fight systems, increase the levels of cortisol and inflammatory cytokines. These are substances meant to help us in short-term danger, but can be damaging when persistently elevated. These changes don't just affect the mood, they affect the heart, the immune system, the brain, and even gene expression. Studies have shown that loneliness is associated with an increased risk of heart disease and stroke, greater incidence of dementia and cognitive decline, higher rates of depression and anxiety, impaired immunity and slower wound healing, and a greater likelihood of early death. In older adults, loneliness can accelerate frailty and functional decline. In the young, it can diminish resilience and increase the risk of self-harm. Across all ages, it chips away at the very essence of our vitality. Perhaps the cruelest feature of loneliness is that it feeds itself. The more isolated we become, the harder it feels to reach out. Shame, stigma, and that illusion that everyone else is doing fine trap people in a cycle of quiet suffering. Social media, for all its promise of connection, often exacerbates the divide, offering curated lives in place of real relationships. I think medicine does have a role in this disconnected world. As doctors, we're trained to listen for heart murmurs, palpate pulses, interpret scans. But we must also learn to listen for loneliness. A patient who keeps missing appointments, a widow who comes in with vague aches, a young person with inexplicable fatigue. Their hearts may be structurally sound, but they may be emotionally broken. The remedy is not always a prescription. Sometimes it's presence, a conversation, and a moment of being seen. And I think we must treat loneliness not as an afterthought, but as a cardiometabolic risk factor, a cognitive risk factor, a psychiatric risk factor, because that's what it is. And I think the antidote to loneliness is not quantity of social interaction, but quality. A single meaningful relationship can be more protective than a dozen superficial ones. And as individuals, we must cultivate real connection. As a society, we must build environments, communities, healthcare systems, schools that value human connection as much as they do productivity. Because in the end, it's not just about living longer. It's about not dying inside while we're still alive. I would love to hear your thoughts about this. And once again, if you take the time to listen to me, I can appreciate how precious that time is. And I truly, truly value everything you write, everything you say. I read everything. And once again, I'm so grateful for the privilege of being in this position. Thank you so much.